Greetings to all the participants. On behalf of Office of Tibet, I am Tsultrim Gyatso and I work as the Chinese liaison officer at the Office of Tibet. I would like to share my sincere congratulations to Dr. Yang Jian Li and Dr. Han Lin Chao for being able to continue the initiative and held the 15th Interethnic Interfaith Leadership Conference, an initiative that started with the guidance from His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Here I was asked to address the most urgent issues that Tibetans are facing, and I think the first thing that we should know is Tibetans are facing a systematic destruction of language, culture, and religion for the past 60 years and more. We have never encountered such an unfortunate situation in over 1,000 years of history. The repressive policies and regulations that Chinese government imposed in Tibetan areas are the source for issues in Tibet. And that is the reason why Tibetans are still resisting, peaceful protests are still happening, and self-immolation cases are happening one after another. I think there are usually two types of policies and regulations that Chinese government imposes on Tibetans. One type of policies are introduced in a way that sounds very beneficial to the Tibetans. But in reality, the PRC government will never implement them. And there is another type of policies and regulations that obviously doesn't make sense, which also violates many universal human rights codes and goes against with their own constitution. But then they will implement these and closely monitor on enforcing them. Since we have a limited time frame for this video, I will slightly touch upon some of the failed policies. Religious freedom. Policies introduced on religious belief in Tibet are violating religious freedom of Tibetans. Destruction of Tibetan Buddhism has occurred in the past by physically destroying thousands of monasteries. And in recent years, demolishing of large Buddhist centers are still happening. Larungar, Yachingar are the best examples that we can recall easily. Monks and nuns are limited in monasteries, and even ordinary lay people are restricted to follow their rituals. I can remember when I was in Tibet, school teachers used to announce in the classes that you're not allowed to visit monasteries, or you may face consequences. I also remember the local law enforcement will usually come to your house and look for photos of His Holiness. Punishment could be up to imprisonment for just having a portrait of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And these things are still happening inside Tibet up to this date. On reincarnation. Interference into Tibetan reincarnation is strongly pushed by the PRC lawmakers and policymakers. They are introducing new rules and regulations to redefine our religion. Now in Tibet, the reincarnation of lamas has to get approval from Chinese government. It's pathetic that an atheist government is hosting workshops to Tibetan lamas on how the reincarnation process is supposed to work. But these things are happening under the enforcement of so-called the State Religious Affairs Bureau Order Number 5, which says measures on the management of reincarnation living Buddhas in Tibetan Buddhism, but in fact they are planning to use this policy to get control of reincarnation and for the reincarnation of His Holiness in the future. PRC should know that policies like this are putting needles into the heart of the Tibetans. Instead of retaining control, it will lead to more resilience from Tibetans. Now on language. Language rights are permitted in the Constitution and introduced in the autonomous law. However, it has not been properly implemented. Under the bilingual policy, bilingual language policy, Chinese medium or the Mandarin-centered instructions are patronized in all levels of schools. Since 2000, the shift from Tibetan medium instructions as shifting to Chinese medium instructions. In my years of primary school in Tibet, different subjects are taught in Tibetan. I can remember that I learned my math in Tibetan and other subjects in Tibetan. But when I enrolled in junior high school in Tibet, the instruction medium is in Chinese in all the subjects except Tibetan class. Recent analysis by the Human Rights Watch on bilingual education can tell us Chinese medium instruction is implemented in primary schools, and even in kindergarten it is implemented in today's Tibet. Tibetan medium-centered schools are closed, and campaigners on language rights are detained and charged with jeopardizing state security. In 2018, there are 3 schools closed in Tsultrim part of the Tibet, and the only reason is that there are private schools with the teachings in Tibetan medium. Tashi Chu, I think many of us can recall him, a campaigner on language rights, was detained in 2016, and the court sentence order came out in 2018 under the name of incitement of split the country. Similar cases are happening to all the Tibetan areas in Tibetan Plateau. On ethnicity, ethnic unity regulation was introduced in early February this year, and it requiring all levels of government, companies, community organizations, villages, schools, military groups, religious activity centers be responsible for work on ethnic unity, while describing it will award individuals and all levels of jurisdiction for setting the role model of following the rules. It also describes those who don't follow will be punishable. The 46th article of this regulation describes that individuals harming ethnic unity by taking part or discussing separatism and jeopardizing social harmony will be subjected by relevant officers to criticism, re-education, and administer corrective courses. The same article outlines that matters concerning security will be accordingly punished. This means that someone who keeps just a portrait of His Holiness the Dalai Lama could be considered harming the ethnic unity. Someone speaking for the Tibetan language rights could be considered discussing separatism. Preserving Tibetan culture could be considered jeopardizing the social harmony, and punish those people with the claims of causing security problems. Another thing, massive forced labor. Recent studies have shown that China sharply expanding mass labor programs in Tibet to lift the economy. Research experts like Adrian Zhang describe it as the most clear and targeted attack on traditional Tibetan livelihood that we have never almost seen since the Cultural Revolution. Tibetans from rural areas with nomad farmer backgrounds are moved to vocational training centers to receive ideology education. Military style trainings is given at the centers, and participants are required to military drills and dressed in uniforms. We should know that economic policies introduced in Tibet back then and now haven't benefited the Tibetans from it. And still, business and enterprises from mainland China are the beneficiaries under these policies. These policies mentioned above is some of the examples that I am giving to you, and it's actually violates PRC's constitution. Under the PRC constitution, the law of the People's Republic of China on regional national autonomy was issued in 1984, and it was revised in 2001. According to the law, ethnic minorities have the right to establish autonomous government to administer the ethnic minority concentrated areas. In the 67 articles of the autonomy law, It has mentioned quite a number of privileges that autonomous areas could have. For example, the right to carry forward traditional culture, the right to preserve and develop spoken and written languages, the right to freedom of freedom of religious belief, and etc. However, these constitutionally given rights are not executed in reality, but violated with the policies like mentioned above. So what we need is a win-win solution, a way forward. The middle way policy proposed by His Holiness the Dalai Lama was embraced fully by the Tibetan parliament in exile, and the Central Tibetan administration have been pursuing a general autonomy for all Tibetans living on the Tibetan plateau within the framework of Chinese PRCs constitution. Issues in Tibet have worsened in recent years, and we are urging Chinese government to correct their failed policies. CTA has implemented outreach tasks in the offices Tibet at the different countries to reach out to Chinese public, and it is important for our Chinese brothers and sisters to know what are our stands and the factual status of Tibet without any fabrication. Dr. Yang Jianli's initiative of this conference is an example of people's power, especially from the Chinese ordinary people's power, and I greatly appreciate your contribution to let more Chinese people know about this.